Hello and welcome. I hope that you are all doing well. In this video, we're going to talk about loops and repetition inside of JavaScript to give you a better idea of how we can repeat instructions that need to be repeated various times. And there's a lot of different instances where this sort of thing is going to come in handy. One of the most prevalent ones is actually with the arrays that we discussed in the previous video. So with that being said, let's jump right into the code and see how loops work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present to you a very simple problem. That would be if I have my products array, like I had in the last video, and say I have 3 different products. And suppose that I wanted to print out all of these products to the console. Well, one way that we could do that is we could do console.log, products at 0, and then we could do that again for 1 and 2, right? So I could copy and paste this and do this for 1 and do this for 2, and doing that would print it all into the console. So let's just take a look at that quickly to see what that looks like, get sort of like a baseline idea. So I've got my console open here. I click on this. You can see the 3 products are now printed into the console. Now, this sort of thing works relatively well for this situation because there's only 3 elements in my array. However, what if there was 100 elements in my array? All of a sudden, this solution obviously would not work. It would be way too tedious, and there would be so much repetition that it just would not be a good solution to the problem overall. So because of this, we want to find some way to do this without having to repeat the instruction over and over again. Well, more so, we don't want to repeat the instruction by typing it over and over again. We want to repeat it through a structure such as a loop. So I'm going to discuss to you a few different types of loops and what they're able to do. The first type of loop is called a for loop. And what a for loop will do is it will repeat an instruction a specified number of times. So for example, suppose that we wanted to do this console.log for each of these products. What I could do is I could declare a for loop. So I could say for let I equal 0, I less than products.length, I++. Let me break down each of these components for you here. We're declaring a new variable called I, and we're setting it equal to 0. We are going to repeat everything between these 2 braces while this I value is less than the length of the products array. On each iteration, every single time that we get to the end of the for loop, we're going to take the I value and we're going to increment it by 1. That's what the ++ means. So to summarize, we're going to start at I equals 0, and we're going to run all of the instructions between these 2 braces, increasing I by 1 every single time until I is no longer less than the product's length. That's what this is going to do. And then using this, what we could do is we could say this. We could say console.log products at I. What's going to happen is I starts at 0. So console.log will log products at I, so products at 0. And then it will go back to the top here. I increments by 1, making it equal to 1. So then it will print out products at 1. And then again, it comes back up and it increments again. And then it will print products at 2. And then it will keep on doing this until I is no longer less than the products.length, which will be once I equals 3, which is of course the end of the array. And what the result of this is everything gets printed onto the log. So let's refresh here. We click on buy now, and you can see all the products get printed into the log. So you can see that these loops actually do work quite well for printing all of the values. So that's one way that we could do that. There's a few other ways that this can be done, right? So this is a simple for loop. There's a few other types of for loops that we have available to us. One of them is called a for in loop. So the way that works is we say for let x in products, and then we can console.log x. So what will this do? What this will do is it will take every single index from the array products and put them into x. So in the first iteration, x would be equal to 0. The next iteration would be equal to 1. The next iteration would be equal to 2. And it repeats this until it reaches the end of the products list. So almost the same idea as this, except instead of declaring the I equals 0 and I less than products.length, it will just go through the whole array, starting at 0 until the end, storing the indexes in x. So let me show you what happens when we run this. If I come back over to my code, I refresh it, I click on this, you can see I get 0, 1, and 2. You see it's printing the indexes of the array rather than the values in the array. So that's what the for in loop is going to do. And of course, we can make this print out the elements in the list, right? We could just do products at x like this. So what you could do is you can see this as a shorthand. This is a shorthand version of this loop here. So if you want to just go through incrementing by 1 every single time until you reach the end of the list, this is a shorter syntax for this. So this situation here, the for loop works in this case for situations where we don't necessarily have an array of values, or we want to repeat for something different from the array's length. That's the situations where you use this kind of for loop. This kind of for loop here is when you want to iterate all of the values inside of a list. Now, there's actually another way to do this as well. We can do for let x of products. What this will do is instead of giving us the index, it will actually give us the values in products. So this one gives us each index in the array. This one gives us each product in the array. So that's the difference between these. This one gives us the indexes. This one gives us the products. And then the final type of loop that we'll discuss is a while loop. A while loop works a fair bit differently from a for loop. Rather than repeating a certain number of times, what a while loop does is it loops until a condition is no longer true. So let me give you an example. We could declare a variable I and set it equal to 0. And what I could do is I could say while I is less than products.length. And what I could do is I could do the console.log products at I, and then I could increment I after that. What this does is it starts I at 0, and it's going to repeat the instructions between these two braces while this I value is less than the product's length. So what happens is we print out the product, and then we increment it ourselves. And then it keeps doing this until eventually this increments beyond this condition, and that will reach the end of the list. So this is the idea of the different types of loops that exist. So again, just to clarify, this for loop works best for situations where we want to loop through things that aren't necessarily an array, a repeat for a number of times not based on the length of an array. This one works best when we want to get all of the indexes in an array. This one works best when we want to get all of the values in an array. And a while loop works best for situations where we want to loop through things that aren't necessarily based on an array condition at all. Maybe they're based on some other condition being true or false. So that would be the idea of these various different types of loops. So that's everything that I wanted to discuss for looping. From here, we're going to discuss how we can actually start to output things onto the page using JavaScript, and how we can interact between HTML and JavaScript. So thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next video.